So good afternoon and welcome to the Daily Support Call. Today we are absolutely privileged to have Anna Rejab with us. She is a business banking specialist that focuses on small and medium enterprises. So welcome today, Anna, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Marcus. I hope I can contribute to to alleviate the fears and apprehension and hopefully have fun while doing it.
Well, yeah, I do. I can promise you some fun, and hopefully those other two things will happen as well. It's been interesting times over the last few weeks. Obviously, there's been a lot of big changes going on in the world, and even from day to day. Just before the call started, we were talking about some of these, unexpected things that get announced to everybody all at the same time, because that's the way the speed of information is going. What I've noticed overall, and this will be our first point of conversation, is in week one, there was like a mass amount of fear and reaction, sometimes overreaction, panic of the future, people not knowing what to do, regrets of the past for things they hadn't done when they had the time. And that was week one. Week two, there was a lot more anger, a lot more denial, people thinking, it's not a big deal, or, oh, when are we going to get back to work, and that kind of thing. And then in traditional Canadian fashion, week three, which is this week, I've watched so many people, it almost seems as if we're now just accepting this as the new normal. Like we're starting to normalize and life is continuing, not the way it was at all, but we're getting used to being at home already, at least as far as mentality wise. I don't think any of us are used to being at home, but we're less resistant to what's been going on, and we're actually starting to accept that this is how things are right now. So what have you noticed over the last 3 weeks as far as, these fears and everything else?
Well, it did start with a lot of panic buying I see at the shops. And then a lot of people, they don't know what's going to happen to their business, to their jobs, whether they can work from home. And then those with kids like me, like how do we manage it? But we find that in the end that we can pull together. And then I think like my family has become like a unit, like everybody plays a part. And then there's a lot of silver lining in it. Like, my older child knows what to do when I need to go on a webinar or a con call, take care of a little brother. And it just gives more ways, and it makes me realize that it's not impossible to work from home, and it's not impossible to balance it all. And
Right.
although it's not always balanced, and sometimes someone walks in when you're having an important con call, but we work around it. So I always say that I work around my kids' schedule and my kids work around my schedule.
I love that. And yeah, I mean, if you've tuned into any of these, you'll know that that's something we preach in our business programs, is having that daily schedule, having that routine. I mean, working from home, that's one of the key components, is saying, look, this is my dedicated work times. If that door is closed, you do not come in, you do not yell through it, because it means I'm busy working. And it's from certain hours, and those hours are honored, because in return, then it gives you the opportunity to balance. Okay, what are we going to do for fun today? What are we going to do for the kids today that they want? And they actually get a hand in creating their own schedule and in contributing to the household, like you said. So that makes me really happy to see that you're doing that. The other comment you had was working from home. Yeah, it can be done. I find it interesting. I have been working from home on and off for 22 years. I used to be in digital marketing before I started my business management consulting. And this is just something that I've always done. I've always loved it. It's why I built the company remotely the way I wanted it to be, because who doesn't want to be on a beach and working, right? And it's been fascinating for me to see that proactive versus reactive nature. I mean, so many clients from my past where I'm proactively saying, here is why you want to have remote project management. Here is why you want to have remote systems. And they're like, yeah, maybe one day. All of them called when this happened. And suddenly everybody wants remote project management and remote project management systems. So similarly, the reason I share that story is what have you noticed that happen, things that proactively you might have been saying to small businesses in the past, and now they're listening. Now they're listening because they have no choice but to listen. What are some of those stories?
It's interesting. I was hosting a breakfast meeting just about a week before it was announced it's a pandemic. And one of the question I pose is, what's going to happen if we all have to work from home? That you must. And some businesses just cannot because of the nature of their business. But a lot of them say that we've taken steps in a way, like the calling tree, how to call each other during an emergency. And then certain things will just go the same way it was before. We'll have a meeting twice a week. We'll still have a meeting twice a week. But there'll be a lot of teething problems at the start, of course, with technology and everybody not being on board. But as time progressed, we see, just like the businesses, just like my team, we've kind of normalized that, okay, we're going to have like 30-minute meetings, con call, and then one solid hour. And so something like that, it works. We find it works. And then we use a lot of technology now. I think DocuSign, all those technology to sign documents are now more prominent. And then we realize that a lot of things can just be done remotely, and it saves time. So I think that even after the pandemic, a lot of work process will change, that there is no need to really just go out all the time. Whatever can be done remotely and saves time from driving from one place to another will be just carry on.
I agree. Well, and this is why I use the phrase normalize, as
Yeah.
opposed to going back to the norm, because, you know, you're right. There's no going back per se. Now, I'm not saying sky is falling, world is over, anything like that. Like, the markets are going to recover, economies are going to be fine, people are still going to have jobs, that kind of thing. But yeah, the way we do things, quite a bit of it is going to be different. Not just the working from home, but even, you know, walking into the grocery store and now seeing giant plexiglass between you and the checkout clerk. They're not going to get rid of that after, because it was a lot of money and time to put those in for protection. So why would they not just leave them there? One of the most fascinating topics we've talked about over the last week on these calls is exactly that point. The number one cost for larger corporations is commercial leases. And now that they've spent all this money and transitioned people to working from home, they're not going to renew. Why? Why would they keep that huge expense when there's such an increase in profitability when you've got teams working efficiently from home? For me, it's kind of self-satisfying, again, being in remote project management and stuff, because that question you posed to that breakfast group is beautiful. Because really, the truth of the matter is, probably about 80% of what you're doing in your business, if you already have systems in place for in-person, for live work, that's the part, the rhythm and the meetings and the agendas and the what does each day look like normally. Translating that into remote work, distributed teams work, really just becomes about the technology then. Unfortunately, what's happened with a lot of companies is they're just kind of winging it anyway, even when they are in person. And we're talking large businesses as well as small. And when people are forced to become distributed, suddenly realizing there was no work culture to begin with, no standard processes and rhythms to begin with, that's where everyone is really panicked. But yeah, things are starting to normalize, and I agree with you 100%. The future looks so hopeful and so interesting, because it's going to be so very different, yet so very much the same. Yeah, have you had, with your team, have you had any challenges beyond the technology? Like you said, people have figured it out and gotten the balances, but what were the big hurdles other than technology for you?
It is trying to stick to a routine, honestly. And also we do miss the interaction, the really in-person interaction, you know, the spirit of the team. So we have to work around there. But also, as we are learning, there are things that we still need to meet in person. Um, and the documents that we need to witness. So those are things that we still need to figure out how to work around. And then appraising commercial properties for the environmental inspections. Those are things that still have to be done. But what we found out, that we can do things remotely for the start, just to get the paperwork and everything going, and then the inspection can be done later on. So there's a lot of things that we are learning as well, that, for example, that maybe allow us to print from home instead of printing at the branch. So that's specific to banks. There's a lot of, because of confidentiality, we cannot print from home. So everything is printed at a branch, and it's all witness. But there are things that we kind of need to figure out. How do we find a way in between, whether it's signing a release, like the customers agrees that we can be print from home, and then we can drop them at the portion for a pickup. So we need to find a compromise somewhere in between.
Absolutely. I mean, that's actually been one of our most fun challenges with our clients through this. I'll give you an example that's not bank related. We work with a wedding management company, right?
Mm.
And so they're doing a lot of weddings. So we quickly help them pivot to doing virtual weddings. How would that work, et cetera, et cetera. And we managed to figure it all out really quickly, except for one piece. In Ontario, the official has to be present physically to officiate the wedding. It
Mhm.
can't be done through teleconferencing. They actually have to be there. So it was like, oh, okay. So then we had to come up with a different solution. And what I find interesting, and it's always been this way, regardless of pandemics or anything else, is the processes always catch up after the change, right? I mean, that's kind of why, and I hate to say this analogy, but it's kind of why the criminals always manage to stay ahead of the police, right? Because there's always new ways to break the law. There's always new ways to circumvent the systems, and then we patch those holes after
Mhm.
the fact so more people cannot. And it's the same kind of thing. Like right now, we know over the last couple of years in Europe, and I know there's some initiatives starting in Canada in regards to GDPR and privacy.
Mhm.
So to your point, I mean, I've been working with some larger corporations, international corporations, that they've never even allowed people to have data at home, let alone print at home. Like you can't even have some like a client's data on your laptop
Mm.
because it's not secure. And yet, in order to survive, you know, we've had to pick and choose. Okay, what's the lesser evil here? You either have no cash flow and start hemorrhaging from your reserves, or you let people take stuff home and we figure this out later. Right? And unanimously, of course, they're like, fine, we'll let people take stuff home. But again, it's not like you're never going to get all of that data back from people's computers. It's always going to end up being somewhere else. So privacy is going to be an interesting change going forward too, because in some ways, in person, we're going to insulate ourselves and be a little more private. But what does that actually mean for our data in regards to, say, you or me having it on our laptop at home? So fun little challenges.
I think, but with the banks, we have that in place already. So we have a separate phone for work. We have a separate computer for work, and it's all, there's a lot of access points and multiple layers of passwords that we have to memorize and go through just to log on. So in that way, it's separate. So the data for the customers, it's all private and it's safe there. As long as no one's reading behind me at home, which is actually just family, it's all safe.
Understood, right? And there's only so many precautions that we can take in our environment, of course. And I didn't want to imply. So let me clarify. I wasn't implying that the data is not safe through banks. Again, depending on what field you're in, we're working in the health and wellness industry as well, and we're implementing VPNs so that people can actually tunnel in securely to the systems that exist at the workplace. And I'm sure the banks obviously have all of our data protected.
Yes.
It's why we trust them. So
Thank you.
so other than, you know, some of those team challenges, what have you found to be some of the biggest challenges for your clients themselves during all of this?
Um, there's just so much information flying around everywhere. So they are looking to banks to give clarity, to give them reassurance that we are there for them and how to get the need that they have. And so we try to work around their hours and we try to be on top of it. The moment something comes out in the news, we'll be on top of it. We want to make sure that businesses survive. Small to medium-sized businesses, they are the backbone of the economy. So that's why when Trudeau announced the loan, the $40,000 loan for small to medium-sized companies, it's a very important thing. Um, because learning from the Great Depression and past recessions, we need to put money in the hands of small and medium-sized enterprises that employ a lot of people. We need to put money in the hands of people to kind of inflate the economy to avoid a very deep recession. And that's why things need to be done fast. For example, the Canada Emergency Business Account, the fund. So it's a $40,000 loan for clients that meet the criteria. It's lent through the financial institutions, and it's $40,000 for it's interest free up to December 31st, 2022.
Hmm.
And So interest free up to December 31st, 2022. And if the business managed to pay off before that date, they get a $10,000 loan forgiveness from the government.
Oh, wow.
So you pay the bank money back, $40,000, but at some point, at some form, there'll be something back for businesses that pay. And if you need extra time to pay, you can extend the loan up to 3 years past that date at 5%. And the criteria is interesting. There's no industry specific criteria. It's not like some industries cannot borrow this money. It's open to the banks. Is the main criteria is the payroll. The minimum payroll is $50,000 per year to a maximum of $1 million. The rationale behind this is to make sure that the money goes into businesses that employ others, that has others depending on them. So if we manage to keep the business afloat, we're keeping the jobs too.
Right.
Right. And then of course there's the CRB for those wage earners as well. So it kind of like we help this business, we help the people. That's what the government's thinking about. And another thing is to make it quick, which is why businesses need to go to their main account, where their main business operating account has already been, the day-to-day banking, they go to there. And there's no education, there is no all those documents that you normally need when you apply for a loan. It's just the employer number, the CRA employee number, the T4, SUM, the summary of remuneration. It makes the process easier, but at the same time, you don't hop to another bank. And the point is because banks already have in place lending criteria. So banks will lend to businesses that are already thriving prior to the pandemic, that are doing well. So we're putting money in the hands of businesses that have been doing well prior to the pandemic and making sure that they remain well, so they can continue being part of the economy, expanding the economy, and then the employees that work for that business will continue to earn and to spend in the economy. So that's the reason why you have to go to your existing financial institution. You can't shop around.
Well, and it's amazing when you think about all the moving parts that are involved in decisions like this, all the way up the food chain, and how quickly they get to these decisions. And I think from the way you've described it, this sounds really brilliant to me. So just one first clarifying question: is this a bank loan or a government loan?
It is a bank loan backed by the government, fully backed by the government. So you don't need the usual 2 years past financials, the projections, the business plans. You don't need all of that. It's fully backed by the government. It's guaranteed by the government. But of course, the government doesn't want to back loans that are going to fail. Right. Which is why they leave it to the banks to decide who to give it to. So that's why we will give it to clients that have been making their payments, have been having a good credit prior to the pandemic, and we'll just make sure that they will continue being strong and continue growing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so reduced criteria, right? Yes. But still bank discretion. What I like about it, and I'm not putting words in your mouth, this is strictly my opinion, is it's hedging bets, really. It's like, if a small business wasn't doing well prior, they may or may not have made it regardless of the pandemic. So now that the pandemic's here, the unfortunate reality is not every business is going to survive getting through this. They might not be able to transition. To your point earlier, there's some businesses that simply cannot change enough to work remotely or work in a non-touch environment that might not survive. So the banks then have the discretion to hedge the bets, put their money into the most safe options to keep, like you said, business going, keep the economy inflated. And that's wonderful from the bank side. I also think it's really smart from the government side, because what they've done is they've essentially figured out a way to not have to, provide even more funds directly from the government. They're backed by the government, yes, but that buys them some time in case something goes wrong. But at the same time, it shows wonderful willingness on the banks to say, of course, we want to help the community. Of course, we want to help the citizens and small business owners, the backbone of our economy. So we're willing to do this with the criteria, and it allows the government to minimize the amount of spend it has to do up front, which is great. So while the banks are focusing on things like SEBA, then you still have things like CERB that can apply for people that don't qualify for this type of loan. So the logistics of it all is so fascinating, and for these teams to come up with it that quickly and implement it. So speaking of which, when is this available? Is this available already, or how do we get access to this?
It's going to be done remotely. It's all going to be online. It's within the next 2 weeks, you'll see a lot of banks putting up online. So it's got it. So what bankers are doing now is just advising their clients, make sure that you have your online banking password, whereas everything is up to date, your emails, your phone number. And then within the next 2 weeks, you'll see a link that you can click on to fill up an online form that you do not need to speak to a person unless you really need more advice, and everything is just automatic. So is this also pushing clients that, yeah, I don't want to do online banking. I still want to see somebody all the time, even though I don't need to. So now this is the only way you can get it, is actually through online. Because we are not asking for your balance sheets and all that. We just want you to give the CRA, employer number, and all this all online, get it done. We'll just process it and you'll get the money into your account.
Right. Well, and it's now, see, I love that even more, because now you're training people on how to do a lot more self-serve, how to overcome fears of technology, because that's going to be a critical part of life moving forward, like we were talking about earlier. I was actually talking with someone the other day on this show, and it was funny because we become so quick to forget how fortunate we are, even before the pandemic, just how fortunate we are. And, you know, you used to go into the bank for everything, and we would complain about how long the lines always were. So eventually and naturally things evolved to now where there's a lot less staff at banks than there used to be. I mean, you can take a picture of your check from your phone and have it deposited. That would have been unheard of, you know, in the past. And now when you go to a bank, if you have to, it's still funny to me because the lines are just as slow moving, even though there's a lot fewer people. And typically it's because we're only going to the banks now for special functions that we can't do ourselves. So of course it's going to take longer because it needs that individual care and attention. So it's almost that phrase as much as things progress, things stay the same. Right. But I love this. I love that we're going to be putting people online. I have every confidence, of course, that for people that do struggle with technology, banking professionals such as yourselves are going to be more than willing to help people through it via like a Zoom call like this, or on the phone in another way, if there's not clear instructions on how to do it. So that's really exciting. So best advice then for people that qualify, which as you said is based on your employee ID with the CRA doing 50,000 to 1 million in payroll per year, then you simply have to go online when the link is available. So get online, make sure your password's valid, make sure your email's updated so that when this loan becomes available, you will be notified of it. Pay it back before the end of 2022 interest free, or you can continue on for another up to 3 years at a 5% interest rate. Correct. Is that correct? Yes. And if you pay it back before the 2022, the government's actually going to give you a $10,000 loan forgiveness, which is also fantastic.
Yes, that's right. And,
wow, that is powerful.
And also what I like is I get clients who call and they're like, but a lot of my employees, I pay them by cash. So it, in a way, it's also saying that the government wants to focus helping businesses that do not underreport what they do.
Right.
Right.
That's an interesting way of saying it.
I mean, the money comes from taxpayers. So right. The government wants to make sure it goes back to taxpayers.
Right? Well, and you know, and that's a whole interesting
ways that the government is like, this is a way to like make sure, telling people ahead in the future that this is why you shouldn't play around with your figures so much. When the time comes that you need help, we want your CRA number. We want all of those. And then at the same time, sorry to cut you, but at the same time,
please.
like CERB, you have to claim it via your CRA account, your online account. So it makes individuals, you have to open a CRA account online. And everything has to be transparent now. So it's an incentive to going forward to do your taxes right.
Yeah, I get it, and it's I'm actually with you 100%. And it's funny because I used to have these kind of conversations with my father. So when when we were younger, cash deals. He was a mechanic, so paying a guy on the side to do it for you after hours. That's a very normal type of thing. Like
Yeah.
and my father's point of view was, well, the government takes enough from me, so what can I do to keep a bit back from the government? I'll do it because they have enough already. And ultimately, as a society, I feel, again, my opinions, I feel that's really short-sighted for exactly why you just said. Because if we're not accurate with earnings, if we're not accurate on census bureau, like all that kind of stuff, if we do not have an accurate reflection of what's really going on in our economy, then when things like this happen, how does the government know what it needs to do accurately to help us through it? Right. So yeah, I mean, and you see that happening right now. For example, it's a really easy one. Is the big complaint a lot of people are having right now is, sure, $2,000 a month sounds great, to help us get through. So then why is welfare, why has it only been $700 a month? Right. So how is it in an emergency you say people can survive on 2,000, but in regular life you say they can survive on 700? Well, again, part of it could be misreporting of earnings, cash deals on the side, that kind of thing. There's so many parts of it that I don't even want to get into that because it's not what we're talking about today. But I do completely agree with you. I mean, having people view the government as a partner in your business
Mhm.
instead of someone trying to take away from you. Because what's the mindset phrase? There's a mindset phrase for this, and it's things happen for you, not to you. Right?
Sure.
Taxes are not something that happens to you. They're something that happen for you. Those
Mhm.
same taxes give us that universal health care, which is saving so many lives right now. Like if you look at the number of cases in Canada compared to the US, astronomical difference right now.
Right.
And people that want to complain about taxes, and even in that regard, the average cost for treatment of COVID-19 in the USA right now, are you ready for this one, Anna?
Oh.
$34,000 US. I don't know about you, but having an extra $34,000 US laying around, not something many people do.
No.
Right? So no wonder they're having such a hard time because they don't have the benefits we have because of our taxes. And I'm sure there's people that are like, oh, he's so wrong. Taxes are the devil and whatever. And I'm like, no, I'm so proud to be Canadian, love being a Canadian business, and just look at them as your silent partner. That's all it is. They're a silent partner. And if you're not sure how to actually pay less taxes as a business, this is why you talk to people like Anna, you talk to your business accountants. There is lots of way to minimize what you're doing with your silent partner, but don't hide from them, don't ignore them, don't cheat them, because at the end of the day, you're cheating all of us, and that's just not right.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. A little bit of a side rant there
Yeah,
because it's a
sure.
very passionate topic. So what do things look like for you right now with your clients going forward? Like you were telling us about some of the biggest concerns they have, but where do you see things heading in the near future with what's going on in the world around us, as well as the changes to the bank and the things happening with your clients? What's going on there for the near future?
Um, well, for the clients that there probably will be a lot more need to figure out how to automate, how to work from home. So there's probably going to be more demand later on to have talks to client if they want to have the processes in place, so that if anything happens, they can just work remotely. I'm not talking about cafes, but other kind of businesses. And then so normally it's just always leasehold improvement and equipment financing or line of credit. But I guess we need to find another term to finance clients that want to change for technology. And then it's not really equipment, it's not really leasehold improvement. We need to have a different kind of category for clients that kind of give them incentive to improve themselves in that way for the processes, the projects in the future.
Well, and I'm all for that. I mean, that's how you and I met,
Mhm.
and started, referring people to each other, is simply because that's what we do. I've always seen a need for what you offer to your clients and potential clients, and vice versa. I mean, we're having a record-breaking month for that very reason. Companies want to know how to future-proof their business. They want to get into, catastrophe recovery. Like how do you not have this happen again? So all the systems and everything, that's our wheelhouse. And yeah, it's amazing how many people are just desperate for that service right now. And to your point, we've actually had to turn clients away because it's not an inexpensive endeavor, both
Mm,
in money and time. And if I may, let me give you a couple of stats from my world. If you're looking at a company that's doing anything more than 5 million a year, so I know we talked about small and medium business, we'll get to them in a minute, but the average time it takes, forget the money it takes, but the average time it takes to initiate successful change management from the top to the bottom, so all the way from your C-suite down to the frontline workers, and completely change the way a business operates, takes an average of 10 years. And we've had people coming to us and saying, can you do it in the next 10 days? Right now, we're really good at what we do. And our average is we've managed to take a client that size and turn it around anywhere from 1 to 3 years, which is well above industry norm. But if you think about that in a time of crisis, 1 to 3 years, you may not survive that long, especially if you're funding an initiative like that yourself. So having a partner at the bank to be able to support you through that and say, okay, look, here's the new initiative that we have, so that you can hire a team like ours to get that done, so that you can continue to move forward as profitably as you were previously. I think that's a brilliant idea to follow through. Now, just to give some hope, obviously that scales down. Like I said, we've had some small businesses of less than 10 employees doing less than $1 million a year in revenue. We've managed to completely pivot them in less than a week, which is fantastic. Some of the clients we've been working with that are in the 1 to 3 million revenue range, but still less than 15 employees. That's probably going to take about 3 months in total. But like I said, we're 3 weeks in, and they're not quite as fearful as they were, because at least now there's systems in place to continue their sales processes, to continue the actual work processes. Now it's a matter of just finessing all the small stuff to support that, right? So yeah, I mean, it can be done, and it can be done in a very structured way. And I'm not plugging ourselves. I'm just really supporting your idea about how yeah, things are going to need to change going forward to help support businesses in this transition. So again, I'm loving everything you're saying. It wasn't pre-rehearsed. It's all spontaneous, and it's really great to be so aligned in this partnership that we have, and just in the vision we have for how things could unfold. Now, we do have some people that have joined us. I'm not going to call anybody out, but please, if you have any questions, feel free to type them out in the chat, and I'll unmute you, and you can join the conversation. This isn't just a chat between Anna and I necessarily, although I'm okay if it is. But yeah, if you've got some questions for either myself, or if you want to engage with Anna, please just let me know, and yeah, we'll go from there. What else could we talk about today? So we got lots going on in the banks. We got a lot going on with small businesses. Let's talk about you.
Oh, I managed to do an insulated lunchbox yesterday with my 12-year-old, and that was a big win for him. And it's also, as I say, I work around their schedule, they work around mine. So sometimes on certain days, like yesterday, I was more on the children duty. So I work till late at night. Like today, I'm on the less children duty. So I get to do my 9 to 5. So it's a lot of compromise within the family unit as well. There's a lot of give and take. It's not always like that. Sometimes, like today, I know I'm not on duty. So I'm like, I don't want to wake up before 9. So,
That's what I wanted to get to is
yeah.
the real truth of it is,
Yeah.
we're putting schedules in place, but none of us are adhering to them 100%.
Yeah.
I've been doing 7:30 calls, but today my first call was 8:30. So did I sleep in an extra half hour? Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Because we need to take care of us first, right?
Of course.
Now, what about the other side? We're laughing at some of this, but what have been your frustrations? What have been your moments where, like, have you had any meltdowns yet? Have you had any emotions come up? Like, the human being side of this conversation. I mean, how have you been supporting yourself?
Well, it's always that fear, like, will there be a job for me after this? Like, there are a lot of people thinking about, so from a wage earner, salary owner, feel like, will there be a job for me? Will there be job cuts? But how I tell myself is, like, when industry and times changed, then when there are job cuts in one, there's a need for something else. For example, like, 30 years ago, there won't be this many jobs with app development. with cell phones. So there were a lot of job cuts and less people at the teller. There's a lot of less face-to-face interaction kind of jobs, but there are other jobs involved that will be created. So post this, I was thinking you're saying about patching things up. So this project management and so change management. There might be new work in comes to seeing the future. Like projects just involve not reacting, but actually managing what can happen. So like a whole new line of project management that's more preempting something that will happen rather than managing what's going to happen and what is happening right now.
So I love that you brought that up because that actually already exists, and it's an interesting program. It's called Risk Management Professional, RMP. It's a great designation. My wife's actually studying for it right now, and it's the next step. Like you said, it goes beyond day-to-day project management, which has an element of risk analysis in it. But this is a whole other level of, yeah, how can you look forward, predict risks, and mitigate them before they happen? So those people, you're right. It's not a huge field now. I think there's less than 3,000 of them in Canada, but that could easily double over the next 6 months because it's a 6-month program. That could easily double because, yeah, more and more companies. It's common in larger enterprise, but even small businesses need to understand that risk is a critical component of their day-to-day life, and it has to be identified and analyzed instead of shrunken away from. You can't back down from it just because it's a scary thing to think about, right? And a lot of the businesses that have had risk mitigation strategies are doing well during this time. Like for us, for example, because it's part of what we do as a service offering, this has been another day at the office for us. The only real changes in my life is that I still go out and do sales calls. I do live events. I meet with partners like yourself. I haven't done any of that. So I'm missing my human interaction. But as far as the technology, as far as working remotely, it's just another day at the office for me because we made that transition from the beginning. Like that's what our model was based on. Because we know of some of the risks. So for us, it's a little more granular. Like today we're evaluating Zoom versus a couple of other platforms. Which one's actually going to perform better at scale? That's the kind of questions I have to deal with now because with more bandwidth constraints, that's where we get to with technology. You see people, very first world issues, even in my community where I live, people are complaining about how lousy Bell Canada is. Yes, I said Bell Canada. They're complaining because, our internet's slow. And I'm like, well, yeah, because everybody's home all day streaming Netflix. Bell's not used to that. The systems weren't designed for that. So for us, it's getting more and more granular with what the new potential risks are, which is a little bit forward thinking for where most people are. It's like you're saying, how do I transition into something if my job's not there? How can I start to transition into something that's going to be of value? So are you making any time in your daily schedule for some self-learning, for improving your skill set and looking at those options?
I am working towards project management. Everything is on hold for the past few weeks. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. So is this the PMP certification you're looking at?
Yes.
Awesome. We should stay in touch. Very cool. Well, I'm not going to force a conversation. We've talked a lot about a lot of things. Wow. Thanks for getting so in depth on some of them. So to recap, we've talked about SEBA, we've talked about CERB, we've talked about all the things the banks are doing to help support people, working with clients on their own hours, helping them understand technologies, doing everything they can to support each other during this time by limiting the contact where possible, leveraging tools like DocuSign. It seems that you guys have been really proactive as well in making sure that you're staying up and running and supporting the communities you represent. Is there any final words that you would really like to hit home with the people that are here with us or that will be viewing this later on YouTube?
Oh, I see a chat.
Yeah. So what's happening right now is we have Rosalind asking you, can you speak to the hiring freeze that's currently happening in the banks?
The hiring freeze. Oh yeah. There were a lot of budget cuts. So there's a hiring freeze that's happening. But we see that for those sections, there may still be a hiring freeze, but there'll be resources that's going to be allocated to hiring risk managers, something in the future, for not so much for operations, but for risk management, those kind of projects. There'll probably be a lift on that kind of hiring freeze. And that's about it. That's all I can comment on that. There's a hiring freeze in terms of operations, because more money has been popped to the front lines. But there's a lot of changes in how businesses go to clients. So there's more money to there and taking money away from the back office. But there's realization that, oh, that's really interesting. So there's a lot of funds that are allocated to people like me, frontline or semi-frontline. And there were a lot of money that's taken away from the back office. And then when something like this happens, we realize that both are equally as important. There's a whole team of people that make sure that there are enough equipment at the branch. And right now will be sanitizers and gloves. And there's not enough people managing that project because we've taken the resources away from the back to the front.
Right.
And then the front lines are asking, where's my sanitizers? Where are my gloves? Where's the extra this and that we can make this work, working remotely? They're like, yeah, but you've taken resources from us. And the same thing with VPN, with the hard tokens, with the soft tokens. They make those teams smaller.
Mm-hmm.
But now we realize that we need those teams to function as well. So suddenly we're going back to those teams like, we need more VPN access. We need more soft tokens. We need more hard tokens. We need them mailed out. You can't mail them out to branches because you're telling us we can't go to the branch. So then you need a whole team figuring out like, okay, so now we can't mail these hard tokens to the branch. We need to mail them to the house address. So now we realize, I think the management will realize that, no, you can't just freeze one side and expand one side. When one side expands, the other must also expand. And this shows that it really did. Like, they're not in the hard tokens and small little things, gloves, hard tokens, VPN, mailing them out, talking to suppliers.
Yep. I mean, you're right in my wheelhouse, Rosalind. What we call this, actually, what Anna's describing in change management, is called the metronome effect, and we see it in politics every time a new party gets elected. What ends up happening is, things were going this way, and we start to lean towards one side. So in this case, it was all about operations, and then something comes along, and then the metronome hits the other side just as strongly. And now everything's about risk management and forward thinking. And eventually, just like with a metronome, things will normalize again, which is why that word keeps coming up. And what my job is and what my team does is we actually don't really get rid of this effect. We just want to minimize the duration it lasts for. So instead of taking months and years to get back to here, we want to do it in a much quicker time. So hopefully, again, speaking to a bank as a business, they are dealing with billions of dollars, and you got everything from commercial mortgages, personal mortgages, loans to various business. There is so much risk for banks right now, just to their own cash flow. And even that's such a delicate, intricate series of things to balance, that I can understand why there would be a freeze right now. Freeze, assess, figure out what's going on, make a new course of action. And like we were talking about earlier, even with the way it rolls up to the Prime Minister in these initiatives, it's impressive to me, understanding these complexities, how quickly banks are responding, how quickly government is responding with not just half-assed answers and just solutions that aren't well thought out, but real measures to help us today. So yeah, whatever that hiring freeze is, it kind of makes sense from a business point of view. Anna has shed some light on it as well, and I'm pretty sure it's going to normalize. Again, like she said, as long as you have a skill set that is in demand, and that's always what it is, it's in demand. There are so many people that have such great skills, but those skills aren't relevant today. So take a look at what we're talking about. We're talking about risk management. We're talking about strategic planning. We're talking about all of these things that have been undervalued for small business for a while. And now even the big businesses are standing up and taking notice. So that was a fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking it.
Yeah, thanks, Rosaline.
Yeah. Was there any other questions before we wrap up today from anybody? Now is your time. And Rosalind, please let us know if we answered that to your satisfaction. Okay, awesome. So then, yeah, any final words of wisdom from you, Anna? What would you like anyone, not just businesses, but maybe just particularly small businesses, if they're kind of still freaking out a bit, and great, we're glad we can help you, Rosalind. So yeah, if the small businesses are freaking out still, and they still think that, okay, well, this was fun, but it wasn't really super meaningful, and you give me the answers they want, what is the next steps for them? What can they do to get that satisfaction, to get the information that they need? What would you say to those people?
Well, speak to your banker. Make sure you're online. Help is on the way. We do not want you to fail, because when you fail, we fail. So we'll do everything we can to keep you afloat, to keep you thriving, because we're all in this together.
And that's been the recurring theme from every single guest, from every single industry.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, there has been nothing to give me hope more through this crisis than seeing how, as a whole, humanity has really risen to the occasion. We're being more kind with each other, more supportive of each other than ever before. And I think that's a beautiful thing to keep coming up every single time. Anna, please don't leave the call. I'm going to wrap it up. But for everyone else, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I will post some links under the YouTube and Facebook, so that you do have a way of following up either with Anna or some of the things we've talked about today, such as SIBA. You can tune in every single day. We are going to continue to doing this as long as it seems relevant to what's going on in the world. So thank you so much. Have yourselves a great day.